Okay, it says I am live. Let's see if I'm really live and if the sound is working. I am now going live on the iPod. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I am Kendra Ruth from The Hero Spouse, and welcome to Facebook Live, where I will be answering your questions about midlife crisis in your marriage. First thing, some orders of business, especially today because I was not able to get us going on the laptop. I'm going to check in and make sure everything is working as I watch as an observer on my laptop while going live on my iPad. Also the warning, I was going live on usually go live on my iPad, but I was switching to laptop because the sound was bad when I did my sound test on the iPad, and it was horrible last week. So first, it showed me the sound was coming through, but after a minute or two when I tested, it was getting scratchy and there were these beeping sounds in the background. So tell me if the sound is working and update me if the sound is working, but it's not working well suddenly, if it changes. So let's see, it's going to be a while before I find the group in, since I had to try this several times, I had to shut down my entire computer to get back in. And it says sound is good right now. Okay, that's helpful. And now I'm just looking for us in. I created so many events as I was testing this in the last few minutes that I'm still looking for where I'm going live in the private group. I found us in the public group. So that's good, and I can see that it's working. So hold on. And while I do that, let's get out our orders of business. I'm going live in 3 places. I'm going live in a private group on Facebook. If you comment in the private group, then your comments are safe. I'm going live in a public Facebook page, and if you comment there, people can see your comments. They'll get friend notifications if you have them set up that way, or just somebody who went to that page. And I'm also going live on YouTube, and people can see your comments there as well. So I am going to go to each Facebook page and post which one you're in, because sometimes you might not know, so that you can know if you're going to comment whether your comments are safe or not. Or if you want to join the Facebook group and you're not on the private group, you could try and join the private group. So also, this is the last day that Stand Up and Thrive, my membership for Forward Moving Spouses, is open. We close at 9 o'clock Pacific tonight, and it usually closes for 8 weeks and opens again so that the new members have time to go through Detach and Thrive together, and everyone gets to know each other together rather than having rolling right now. So I'm going to be posting that with a link to that as well. And I am posting a link to my free course, Understanding Midlife Crisis, which is my starter course to help you all, when you have all the questions, everybody asks the same questions, and understand MLC and get through all of the why questions so many people ask. So I'm going to go put those in. Don't worry, I know we started late, but I'm not going to stop. I will try and go for a full hour. I'm not going to stop because we hit 2 o'clock or something. Fortunately, the kid that I had to take to counseling is upstairs sick anyway, so I don't have to leave. So hold on a sec while I get into these groups and post. Okay, so there's the comment on the public page. Comment on the private. Okay, hold on a sec. This one's going to be harder since it says happening now. I'm going to refresh the screen again because when I checked happening now, it was one of the ones that I tested and wasn't happening now. So upcoming events happening now. Watch a previous. It says happening now. That's not it. Recent activity details. Watch a previous. Today at 1 p.m. Nope, I cannot find me on the private group. Oh, it says go live. Invite share. And I know why I'm canceling that previous one. because I didn't go. I'm not sure if it's working. So I'm going to go over and just a minute. It says that I'm going in, when I look on my chart, it says the private group, it says the public group. But I still can't find myself. So I'm going to see if this is me. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to mute the sound on here. I'm going to see. Nope, that is definitely a test. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm going to go put a note in the private group with a note to come over to the public page. If it's not working. Okay, so if you haven't missed me yet. Okay. Making comments. Sorry, those of you who are watching. I am so sorry. This is... Okay. Join me here or... Okay, hold on. Let me get over to YouTube. It says I've got 2 watching. Okay. Sorry, I have 2 watching. I'm so sorry. Okay, and now I'm just going to continue because for all I know, it really is working in the private group and I can't see it. You can see me. One person can see me. You found me. Why can't I find me? Okay, I'm just going to go anyway because now I've put all the comments. If people can't find me, yeah. Okay. So our first word, I have them numbered. So if you go back and listen, you can, if you go into transcripts, you can say I was number 3 and you can find them by just finding the number. So number 1, we have Chuck. Chuck is a male left behind and forward moving spouse with a bomb drop of September 13th, 2022, a date of marriage of 2009, and his MLCer is at home and a low energy wallower. He says, we're separated, but living at home with 4 little kids. I'm very new into the midlife crisis world, but I feel I've grown a ton, thanks to the community. I feel like I'm detached and good at the basics of standing with an MLCer, not pushing and focusing on me, all of those other basics. I'm convinced that my wife was triggered into this by a falling out with her mom. They've always been close, but just before bomb drop, that changed. Her mom was also the only person who provided a shred of stability to her in a very chaotic and difficult childhood. Since bomb drop, her relationship with her mom has been hot and cold. I've gently tried to suggest counseling, more following her lead when she'd bring it up. But it seems she's very resistant to doing the work. As a lighthouse who is standing, any tips on helping our MLCer come to their own conclusions that they should seek help, and perhaps even be on meds for untreated mental illness? Ooh. Yeah, ask the really tough ones because if anybody does have some secret to getting somebody to listen to us, we all want to know it. So the really sad part is being the lighthouse means that we are an example for them, but that they don't have to follow the example. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to do exactly what you're doing. And make sure that when you're doing it, you are also not just being the example for her, but offering her praises. Because one of the things, she might feel criticized. What was the falling out with her mother? It sounds like, from your view, her mother, oftentimes we hear about there was a falling out with her mom, and her mom was a terrible resource for her and a terrible influence in the traumatic childhood. But you're saying this mom, she was a positive influence. And she's had a falling out, which is really difficult because the stable force in her life that was there from childhood, something happened to it. And what does she need to do about that? Well, first, you be an example for how to thrive. You take over for the children in as much as you can because they need that. And when it comes to her, I want you giving her as much praise as you can. Talking about how you believe in her. Rather than her constantly, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but we do this when things get tough, constantly being reminded, and often the reminding that we're doing is over. We're not even aware that we're doing it, or we're giving off vibes, or sometimes just comments. We're reminding the person that they're not living up to it right now. I'm doing, honey, I'm sorry, I'm just having to do all this work right now. You're having to do all the work because I can't, because I'm so depressed. I mean, it's valid. You're having to do all this work right now, all of this extra. You're doing the dishes, you're taking care of the kids, you're changing the diapers. You've had more piled on you. And so we have to be really careful that we are showing, it's terrible because you have to be Superman and Superwoman, and you have to be mom, and you have to be dad. You have to be everything, and don't talk about it. And how can you do that? It's not fair to you. So I just want to validate it's not fair. But if you want to help her, you show her by example of how successful at thriving you are, but also that you believe she has that same thing in her to be successful at thriving. Sometimes you see the other person's success and it just highlights the gap in between you and how much, well, you're so much better than me and I don't deserve you. So you want to make sure that you are not only being a fabulous example, but you're also being an example that wants her in your life. If there was this great gap between us, why would I want to be around you? I'm not here because I want to, just go out and rescue people that need rescuing, or I'm not here because I need to be the hero, or I need to feel superior and an authority to somebody. I'm here with you because you're my partner, and partners are equals. We're not always, at the same, just as great at the same times. Sometimes there's a teacher, and sometimes there's a coach, and sometimes there's the athlete, and one has different skills, but we're partners. And that's why I'm here. I'm here because we succeed together. We thrive when we're together. So we can't control her. You know that. We can't control that she is going to come to her own conclusions. Seek help. Counseling, untreated mental illness, all of that. Maybe, and this is a really deep maybe, you could go to therapy and say, hey, could you join me? And it might not be a good idea, and it might, and she might just poo-poo it, or you can get your children into some counseling. And maybe if you got your children in, it could be family counseling, because you know what? Well, let's talk to mom so that mom can help with little Elijah, and I'm using my kids' names, and little, Jeremiah, and maybe we could go that way. I'm trying roundabout ways to get her in. And then maybe they could say, oh, the counselor could do some play therapy, and here's what we do with this. And I don't know. She could just be there, or she could eventually suggest, I bet it would really help if the two of you had some counseling to help figure out what to do with it. I don't know. Because she's going to be resistant to anything right now that is covert attempt to get her into therapy. That is a covert attempt to get her to take medication. That is a covert attempt to get her to face the mirror. That is a covert attempt for her to acknowledge, truly, truly acknowledge, not just a dismissal of, it's just, you're right, it's me, not you. They don't mean it when they do it that way. And even when they do acknowledge, remember, somebody can say it. Yes, I'm an alcoholic and I recognize it, but they're not ready to take the next step of doing something about it. In fact, there are a lot of steps between there before they're finally ready to really solve their problem. And so what you do, you set some boundaries. You learn about codependence and not being it. And that's going to be really tough because you've got little kids. And it's probably really a lot easier sometimes when you have two parents. It's easier when you have two parents who are both there doing the work and getting involved. And it's harder when you have one parent there doing the work that's you, and one parent that is just not doing the work, not necessarily interfering, but they're depressed and they're another child. And it's on those times where you think, it would be so much easier if it was just me and the kids. Because at least then I didn't have this extra one, this other kid. If I had, because you have 5 kids, not 4, in that sense. And wouldn't it be easier if you had 4? So that part, I really want you to think about. That you have to be an example, but you can't overtly say, you have to do these things, I want you to do these things. It's just giving her the praise and the feedback. And sometimes talking to her, what would happen, if tomorrow everything were solved? How would you know everything were solved? And this is for her, you too, but if you woke up tomorrow morning and something you could just tell, everything that is confusing you and that's been going poorly and you've been feeling bad, it were all changed, everything were solved. How would you know? What are those things? I said that something in the air would be different sounds, different feeling inside, the setup, different temperatures, what? And look also to the past. So you can look at this for you, Chuck, and for her. Has she gone through periodic episodes of, say, depression in the past or challenges, and how has she resolved them? Because you are your own greatest expert. Your counselor's not an expert on you. You're the expert on you. She's the expert on her. So look back to the past to see when she had a down period and how she got out through it. And in the past, say 3 weeks, which days have been better and why? Now 3 months, which days have been better and why? What was different on the days when she was cycling positive versus cycling negative? And is there anything that we can recreate that she can put into those? Some of it is just luck. Might be. Some of it is, well, that's not realistic. Some of it is she was with an alienator. Some of it might be that you were on vacation. But what was it about that vacation? What was it about? What was going on? And can we recreate the elements that had us feeling positive and that helped us to succeed and thrive? Otherwise, a lot of what you have to do, sucks, is acceptance. It's accepting that she has to get herself to that water, okay, to drink it. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Number 2, and we're 35 minutes in, sort of, but not really. Okay, I do have a live showing in my corner now, but I don't know which one it's from. I don't know. So I'm watching two Facebook pages and a YouTube. So we're going to go to number 2. We have an anonymous female left behind and forward moving spouse with a bomb drop of December 22nd, right before Christmas. I'm so sorry. Ugh. It's not uncommon. 2020. And a date of marriage of 2000. This is when last time I kept talking about these different ones that were, they said there were this contact type, and I think it's this. This is the one I actually highlighted. It looks like, she says off and on, I think I'm saying that it is a high energy replay, or I mean clinging boomerang. Let's go through it. But this is the one I was talking about. I hadn't got to. I highlighted it in my notes, so it is highlighted here. And she's a high energy replayer. or he is a high energy replayer. She says, we've been together for 26 years. Great marriage, 3 kids. We withstood a lot of hardship. In 2016, he started going out and drinking. He lost his friend to cancer in December of 2017. The first bomb drop was February of 2018. I discovered a 2-month affair that had ended. We went to counseling and he started on an antidepressant to help with the loss. We rebuilt. The doctor changed his meds in August of 2019 and he started to change. At that time, we started a business and I contributed to the stress. My son and his girlfriend had a miscarriage in November 2020, just before a family vacation where he got angry. He yelled at everyone and he left me there. So the miscarriage, the family was just before the family vacation. Oh, wow. Okay. The next bomb drop was December of 2020. He said he had no feelings at all for me anymore. At all for anyone. I'm sorry. He had no feelings at all for anyone. That makes sense. That's depression. Okay. Contributing it to meds and emotional blunting. Good for him. He stopped cold turkey. I don't know about the cold turkey. That's scary, but I'm glad that he was contributing it to the emotional blunting to the meds. In November, he stopped at cold turkey in January of 2021. He left home in March of 2021. He asked for a divorce in November of 2021. I discovered an affair. He acted like a 20-year-old, drinking, spending, gambling. He's been back twice this year with regrets. He failed last Friday, and this was from a week ago. So add another week to that. The alienator is pushing. Is this a midlife crisis? What do I do? Okay, first thing. Yeah, the alienator is pushing. So in some ways go, phew, that's the kind of alienator to have. No, it's not in the sense that they rush it. But you get an alienator like that is possessive and pushy. There's an affair down. So the odds of that relationship making it are low. I mean, they are low anyway for an alienator, but the more they're an affair down, the happier I get. And it makes it hard on you, especially if you don't know what an affair down is and you just think that she's got her hooks in, because they do have their hooks in. Now, if this is an MLC, those hooks are going to stay for quite a while. But he's a clinging boomerang. You say off and on. He left home in March of 2020, asked for a divorce in November. I discovered him. He acted like a 20-year-old spending. He's been back twice this year. If he's been back, especially just in the last few months in this year, and this year is 2023 and we're not even quite halfway through. If you meant this year or in this calendar year or in the last 12 months, either way, that's clinging boomerang. That is definite. Off and ons don't come back like that. Now, what you could be is, it's rare. And I mean so rare that I didn't even think about it until I saw one that fit the bill last year on the forum or on Facebook. You could have a clinging off and on. And I don't really buy into that. It might seem like they're an off and on if the alienator controls the way they communicate and the amount of communication you get. But when they communicate, not every time, but they are showing neediness and a reassurance for you. They need to be reassured that you're gone or that you're not going anywhere. They might want to be reassured that they can come home someday, or they might regularly want to come home. So is this an MLC? This is the challenge. It could be that he's in an MLC and the push to the MLC was created by those meds. My other question, however, since it's only in the last year or so that I have noticed the issue with meds coming up. It's been there, but it kind of surfaced in the MLC community more recently with people posting about emotional blunting and depression causing marital issues, depression meds, probably SSRIs. So do they trigger somebody into a full MLC where the MLC timeline takes over? Or is there then a, sorry for the word, cure? Don't like the word, but is there a cure that can be had with some form of therapy and medication? I don't know. Okay, so clarify off and on. What is an off and on? Okay, what we're talking about is contact types. There are distant contactors and there are close contactors. So vanisher, obviously, probably, but that's distant. And off and on is a distant contactor. They go on a spectrum. So just think of it as a linear thing because it's subjective. Where is the difference between off and on and vanish? Or, it gets to a point where, oh, this is a close to vanish or close to off and on. Then you get the close contactor. That's a boomerang. And you'll see it as clinging boomerang and boomerang. But really, clinging boomerang is a type when you add the clinging. Clinging is when their communications, and this isn't all of them, but just as a pattern, you see a pattern of needing reassurance from you, not wanting you to give up on them, or not sure of that they want and then trying to come home. And that's not all of these things. Different ones will show different things. You might have a clinging boomerang that never actually tries to come home until they do someday. Mine came home 8 times. But they don't want to lose you. They want to be your friend. They might use the house like it's just their own house still. He comes over, he gets into the refrigerator, he sits down, he makes himself a meal. They're comfortable there. With a regular boomerang, you might feel more of a distance, that disconnection that they have. They have closed you off and they don't want to be apart. And it feels, you might even sometimes with a boomerang, you might want to call them one of the other distant contacting types. Or you say the excuse is, oh, the only reason they're even a boomerang is because we have kids. It might be so. But the idea with the boomerang is when you have access to communication, it's just opportunity. So when I tell you what contact type, it is based simply on how frequently you contact. With an off and on, maybe every 3 months. With a vanisher, maybe twice a year. And contact doesn't mean they initiate twice a year. It means contact. If you contact them and you hear nothing, that's nothing. If you contact and they contact you and they respond, that's one. If they contact you. Now, if it's always through an attorney, that depends. There was one who was definitely a boomerang, and I think a clinging boomerang, but this was back when I was going through it before I, was thinking of the terms. But it was definitely boomerang. And his contact was to poke at her and keep her in court. So sure, it was often through the attorneys, but he kept her engaged that way. And yeah, it was a lot of narcissism. But it was definite boomerang and maybe even some clinging. He didn't want to lose her, but he wanted to keep her engaged and he wanted to poke her. And the only way he knew how to do it, to keep her attention, was negative. Frequency made him a boomerang, at least. So if you have contact once every 2 months, I still call that a boomerang. So notice, if you have contact, obviously once a week, boomerang. So it's about the frequency. When you ask whether it's a clinging, that's when we start to look at what is the emotional connection with the contact. If there is a reason that is emotional for the contact, I was just thinking about you. Please don't give up on me. Do you want a divorce? I'm not sure. Maybe we'll be back again together someday. There are a lot of different phrases that go with clinging. If they come home and come home and come home, that's clinging, definitely. Okay. And in this, you have a clinging boomerang, not an off and on. I don't know since we're looking at a trigger that was, sure, we've got the trigger of the friend's death and things like that earlier on. But he kept trying to get out of it. And he had the affair. And whether that was an MLC or not, I can't say, because oftentimes if you have a midlife crisis, you yank them out, or they are yanked out of the entrance early on usually. Then they haven't gone through and processed all the things they were meant to integrate in this crisis. They will go back again years later, and by years I mean 10. And so it's a whole full separate crisis. You thought everything was better, and then 10 years later, bam, worse crisis. But the first bomb drop was February 2018, so that's only 5, not 10 years. I know that feels like a long time, but you discovered the affair, you went to counseling, you got it started, and it was the meds. So let's say there were no meds, everything was going well. I don't know if we would have had something happen in 10 years and you yanked him out of a crisis. Or, hey, affairs can be resolved without a midlife crisis, and it doesn't take that as long. Midlife crisis, 3 to upwards of 7 years. Recovery from infidelity, the recovery phase might be a while. or not, depending on how well your counselor is. But the gap, what we're dealing with in a midlife crisis, is the gap between what I call it the gap between discovery and recovery. But you might have discovered an affair. The recovery starts if we discover the affair at bomb drop, either by them telling us about it or by us discovering it. 3 to upwards of 7 years later, we begin recovering together. Recovery, what I mean by that is when you have made a commitment to try at least to rebuild your marriage. So the recovery phase, you're not in it yet when you are dealing with MLC and standing for your marriage. Is this so before you might have been in a recovery when you were just dealing with an affair, you went to counseling, you recovered, you were working together in a concerted effort as a team. Now, is this an MLC? Let's treat it like an MLC, because what else are you going to do? It's going to follow it without interference from if there's some sort of magic cure because of the emotional blunting that happened. It's likely to follow the MLC patterns because he has some of that history anyway. There were some triggers. There were some bomb drops. He's got a depression issue. And all of us have to go through a transition. We all that survive long enough will go through a midlife transition. We might not be aware of it because it might not be such a big deal in our lives like crisis level things. And so we still have to go to a point where we decide who we are and who we're going to be in the future and integrate that. And he's doing that. The alienator's pushing. I just want you to find more confidence than fear in that, because alienator's pushing can be amazing. Go, and I don't have time to, since I'm running so far behind, go look up on my main page, midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com, and then go into the articles where you can get a whole list, a list of all of the articles, and look up the affair down. I usually do it by just doing Control-C on the page and keywording affair down and finding it, or you can go affair down and hear a spouse, or in Google, that sort of thing. Or post a comment and I'll look it up and send it right to you later, okay? Because the affair down is a fabulous thing, even though it doesn't feel like it. Let's move on to number 3. And I'm going to tell you that we have 6 to go through. Okay. So we're on number 3. We have Nick. And Nick is a male left behind and forward moving spouse with a bomb drop of February 2023. A date of marriage is 2011. He has a boomerang who is a high energy replayer. If right after she gave bomb drop, I love you, just not in the same love with you, wanting a divorce, it seemed she didn't know what she felt like she needed to do. That's common. Just gave the bomb, now what? I don't know. That's not. For weeks it was at home working, and then on weekends she was gone. Even at the point of a weekend trip home, we did a trip to supply store for lumber. She asked for my opinions on things. During this, you're thinking, oh, things are getting better, aren't you? And the following weekend, she was hateful again. She said she was just using me. She was also saying she never loved me. When she said she was just using you, she's trying to get you to forget about her. She's not really saying she's using you. She's saying that you're better than she is. And she wants you to make the decision to give up so that it makes it easier on her and she doesn't have to feel so guilty. She's trying to get you to stop having faith in her, to stop standing. I gave some time alone, smart contact, for the kids, about the kids, I think you're saying. She went to a different mode, now gone half a week away, half home, still wanting a divorce. But nothing but about needing space and lies. She says she's staying with friends. That is in here, not mine, although I agree with it. But now 2 months later, I find he is working with her. Okay, so she's working with who you are assuming the alienator is. There's a lot more friendlier conversations about everything except us. There were things that match the later stages in the process within the last year. She mentioned these before 2 years ago. So is there, or can there be a second bomb drop later on during other stages. I'm not sure. I don't know if I copy and pasted something weird because it might have gotten out. There were things that matched of the later stages within the last year. But bomb drop wasn't until February of this year. She mentioned before 2 years ago, and then I have a break in the, can there be a second bomb drop? So let me just go over what about bomb drops and second bomb drops. I don't believe in second bomb drops really, unless it's a scenario like I described where they get yanked out and 10 years later they have a worse crisis. Call that a second crisis. Yeah, you got a bomb drop. If there are years between bomb drops, I'll look at it and we'll say, yeah, okay. But for the most part, you get a bomb drop and you have a midlife crisis. And then if you say, well, I had a bomb drop a month later and then a month later, then you weren't understanding that it was MLC yet, or didn't know about it, or weren't accepting it. Because you accept the crisis, you accept that things are going to get worse. That means when they drop this second horrible news on you, oh, I knew it was going to get worse. You had prepared yourself emotionally for it. If you keep feeling like, oh my God, then you weren't accepting that it's in the midlife crisis, in the process of midlife crisis. I mean, sure, there could be things that were more shocking than what we experience in midlife crisis technique. I mean, you get a bomb drop and then they murder your family. Okay, that's a second bomb drop. But I haven't seen that happen, thank God. So I think of this as one bomb drop. What do you mean by a second bomb drop during later stages? If they're in midlife crisis, you already knew they're in midlife crisis. Are you expecting a divorce call then? Because you're getting it now. You think you saw later stages. What are the stages that you saw? You saw a few years ago. She mentioned 2 years ago things that match later stages. So a later stage would be liminality. Jim Conway calls that depression. So I don't know which ones you're reading. So if you're reading Jim Conway's stages, and he wrote Men in Midlife Crisis, which is why I reference him. For a long time, it was considered the Bible of MLC for standards. Then you might be thinking, okay, well, she was depressed within the last few years. So she was showing a sign of later stage. And this would be one of the reasons I think that that's a terrible name for the stage. Because first thing, depression is something that happens to people. It's not isolated to MLC. And midlife crisis is depression. The entire thing is depression. And so calling a stage depression is really confusing. So there's that. Liminality is the point where you're no longer running away, although that doesn't mean you're coming back to your spouse. But it feels like depression because now the mirror is right here and you have to face the mirror and you have to face all of the sins and shames and guilts, even if they're not really shameful, but you're ashamed of them. You're ashamed of this thing, but maybe you shouldn't be. But you have to face this. And then you have to face, why am I ashamed of this thing that I shouldn't be ashamed of? Maybe you were a fabulous artist, but your dad wanted you to be a lawyer and you go into business or go join the military and you be a man, and so made you feel ashamed of your skills. So that's something beautiful about you that shouldn't be shameful. So not only you have to deal with the shame of your art, but why you're ashamed of something that's not shameful. So there are also many things we have to put back together. That's liminality. Were you seeing that? And because before liminality is escape and avoid in midlife crisis. But in a midlife transition that isn't at crisis levels, we have separation, liminality, and reintegration. Those are the midlife transition stages. Midlife crisis is a type of transition. So midlife crisis is a separation, but under the separation is your escape and avoid. So the crisis people try to avoid liminality. The non-crisis people don't necessarily try to avoid that. It's escape and avoid that makes it the midlife crisis. So she is escaping and avoiding right now. Keep doing what you're doing with the smart contact, yeah. But you had a bomb drop only a few months ago. She is behaving, so far from what you've said, like a typical MLCer. learn about MLC and what you need to do. Learn about what that means for you and your kids and what you need to do to protect them. Learn about what you need to do to heal and to be an example for her, whether that means I'm going to be an example for her so that we can co-parent. Learn that she's going to cycle. There are going to be good weeks and she's going to seem like a clinging boomerang and she's going to come back. And then there's going to be bad weeks. You're in the same house, but you're not in the same house. I actually like the half home, half not, in the sense of it might be a little bit like bird nesting, which is what couples who are separating and divorcing do when they have children, and they decide the children get the house and we will switch places instead of the child going to one house and then the other. It's more stable for the children. But right now, one of the things is she's not going to stop this divorce process. My husband stopped it, but that's not normal. I mean, he stopped it very quickly. Odds of her stopping it, she's going to still want the divorce and still want it. And you're going to think that's consistency, but she just needs to see consistency from all of you as well for a few years. Sorry for the background. It's just I might have to go up and hold on. I'm going to go stop that. Now you don't have to listen to the recording on my phone. She's going to be in a midlife crisis. She's going to continue to want a divorce. Imagine that she's really confused about it, but she tries to stay consistent on, I'm not good enough for you, or whatever her reasoning for divorce is. Some of it she won't say. She's going to try to make you think that I was just tricking you, I was gaslighting you, I was reeling you in so that you would give me what I wanted. And she might do some of that. But this is hard and you might not want to do this. Imagine though, that she really, the core person inside her really doesn't want this. And imagine that she will come back to that person. And if you stayed consistent in who you were, how you felt, the boundaries that you set, so not giving into her all of the time because not doormatting. Imagine what that would mean for her. In 3 or 4 years, let's say 2 to 4 years, that you had been consistent in how you felt and you had strong boundaries. You haven't wavered in that, not neediness and love, but I have love for you. And this kind of love we're talking about, yes, it can go on to the in love thing, not limerence, but the feelings of marital love. But I mean agape. And you believe in her and that you're not going to give up on her. Okay? So, hold on a second. I am going to click on here. Okay, I think I am now watching. I think I can see this. Okay. I can see this. I'm checking out the comments is what I'm doing. So next one, I'm going to go to the other one. And over here. Because what I'm going to tell you is some of the, all I'm getting is Facebook users. So when I see the comments up here, I can't see who's saying it, but I can usually see them, who's saying the comments in each area, but I'm not seeing the same comments. Found you, hello, see you. And can you talk to me about my wife? So I'm going to tell everybody right now, and it just says Facebook user. So first thing, if you are the one who has sent me emails, I do private coaching. You can find private coaching and sign up for private coaching if you want. Also, Stand Up and Thrive has a support group. We gather multiple times a week. We gather two 30-minute sessions and 1 2-hour session in a week. And yeah, you're in a group. But we gather and we chat and we get, each person gets time. Not every time. Sometimes one person gets most of the time. We talk about MLC topics. We talk about what you're going through. You get support from everybody. Or you can do personal coaching with me. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to grab the link for my coaching page. and click it and put it in the comments. And my computer's making funny noises. So hold on a second. And I'm about to switch over my hours. They haven't all been switched for summer season. I can't fully switch until after Friday when the way the system works, but okay. Now let me go, and I'm going to put this in each page. Person, oh. Okay, there's that one. That was in the private page, I think, and okay. So that came up both times. Good. And I'm going to go back in here and let's move on to the next. We're going to go to number 4. This is an anonymous female left behind and forward moving spouse with a bomb drop of January 21st, 2022 and a date of marriage of 2006. She says she has a clinging boomerang who is a low energy wallower. She said, things have improved with my at-home MLCer. So oftentimes with contact types, they'll say at home, but sometimes we know they're a clinging boomerang. So oftentimes if we don't put a contact up, we say at home instead. But she has an at home and says clinging boomerang, just to clarify. Things have improved in the last couple months. For example, we go out to dinner. We go out with friends. We watch our shows together. We hang out in our backyard with a cocktail and a talk. However, there's hardly any affection. Hugs every day and a tap on the butt sometimes, but nothing else. I'm so confused, but I don't ask any questions about it. I know he's dealing with MLC and I don't do any relationship talk. I'm supportive and I lean back when he does. Is the no affection normal? Yeah. Did I just hit something? I said that because, I hit it. There. Okay, I'm back on my page. Yeah, it probably is. Everyone is going to be different. I mean, we've got some MLCers who are complete leches and will take advantage of sex in any place with either alienator or you. That's not most of them. Some of them are serial monogamy, and that includes the alienator when they're with her or her or him, that sort of thing. You have an at-home MLCer. So the first thing I'm going to say is remember, still in a midlife crisis, still at home. Just because your MLCer is at home doesn't mean you're in a rebuilding and reconciliation phase, even though things are feeling better. It's great that they're feeling better, that it can stay on that low level. First thing, are you in therapy? Is your MLCer in therapy? And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't be. Sometimes when I ask these questions, they're just neutral. Because therapy can be great if with the right therapist, and with the wrong one, it's not. And that's terrible to say, because the therapist that's the wrong one doesn't mean they're a bad therapist. It's training. Sometimes the training that we need to deal with what we're going through is not what they get. And so it can be traumatic in a variety of ways. We've talked a lot about the trauma of therapy. When you go, your MLCer might use it for more bomb drops, and your therapist does the neutral position and you feel attacked, these different things. But there's some other traumas, which I'm hoping we discussed it in a Zoom Live, the last Zoom Live we had this week in Thrive. And I think I need to make a video on some of the things that go on in research. But therapy with the right person can be fabulous for you or them. So really, when I ask, it's just, is it? And then if it's the answer is yes, tell me about it. Okay. And then the no affection is normal. You know he's dealing with you, so you don't do any relationship talking. You don't have to do that. You don't have to follow absolute strict no relationship talks ever. You are a year and a half in, so you're not that long in. I know that sounds terrible. You're not that long in and you have an at-home. But let's also look at, can you really go without ever talking about an elephant in the room and be healthy for 8 months, 12 months, 16 months? Is that healthy to not talk about the elephant? You're tiptoeing around it. And remember, the elephant is not only in the room, but oftentimes it's hidden under the rug. But hey, elephants and rugs, it's not a flat rug. You can see the shape and outline of that elephant. So you guys are tiptoeing around the obvious. There sometimes is going to come a point where you need to talk about it. And how are you going to do that? I don't want you always avoiding relationship talks. I don't want you initiating them frequently, or even I don't want it done very often at all. The best way, however, is if you can steer a conversation, manipulate a conversation, is that the right? So that they bring it up. You kind of lead the conversation, and then from their view, it might feel like they thought of it. That takes practice, skill. I'm writing some scripts, and each situation is really different. So think about some different things. Sometimes it will be like you bring a question and they might realize, but then they take the next step. Others are, can we have a talk? We need to talk about this. And then it's very clear. Or can we talk at 3 o'clock today? That would freak Chuck out. Because anytime you ask for a talk and then you schedule it, and then he's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? The anxiety goes through the roof. And he has an anxiety condition, so it might be worse with him than others. But in a midlife crisis, they're going to worry about that type of thing. But maybe you can ask a targeted question, such as a truth dart type of question. I noticed this. How are you feeling today? How are you feeling about this? And maybe that can lead into basically you're stepping up to a relationship talk by asking something targeted. And if you do that, you don't want to have too many of a series of targeted questions or sometimes comments, because questions can be a cue that, they're asking a lot. What she want? And you can feel peppered if you get too many of them. So if you can do it in one, that's great. But you also are stepping up to get to something deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper. Because I don't want you just doing this no relationship, no affection thing. The no affection, yeah, that can be normal. You might have a sexless life for a while. Or it's no affection and not sexless. And you have to figure that out. You have to figure out what you want, what you need, and what is going to turn them off as well, or set them. It's like if you are going to, let's say you had a getaway without the kids, and you were going to a motel, and sure, maybe you won it. Okay, Chuck and I won one a few years ago, and this is 5 more years ago now, and we had a getaway, and so we found a place for all the kids. Now you've got this getaway, and you just give the slightest hint, maybe with little, flirting eyes even. Now, what do they do to that? Watch out, you're pressuring me. Or ignoring it. I didn't notice anything. That might be a clue. Sometimes you have to push in and say, you know what, it's okay. I'm not going anywhere. But I really did need an answer. And sometimes you don't want to ask the loaded question, do you not find me sexy? Because then they might give you an answer that you don't want to hear. It might not be true. Or maybe it is, but they think that it's forever. And you realize, I've let myself go. So be prepared for what's going to happen. Okay, let's move on to number 5. I said we only had 6, right? I feel like there's more of it. Maybe let's check. 5. Nope, actually one of them didn't get a number. So we actually have 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we have Michael. Michael is a male, left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of November 22nd, 2020, or November 4th, 2022, and a date of marriage of January 9th, 2010. He has a boomerang who is a high-energy replayer. He says, is it possible that midlife crisis character changes into monster is either, 1, a return to a permanent character that was before the marriage after a temporary, let's make a happy marriage role, or a permanent character change into monster? Since my standing pledge to her, she has resolved to destroy me with unprecedented level of abuse. She consults with her best friend on how to insult me. If she's just an evil person, standing has no point. Well, the answer to your question is yeah. On both of those, it's possible. And I'm not going with probable or not. To figure out probability, I want you to look at her and her history. And there was a time maybe I wouldn't have said this, but there were a few that came up like this. I remember one when, during my time as a left behind spouse, somebody, and this was, I'm going female and male. Maybe I'm thinking of two. There was a male MLCer and maybe there was a female. So maybe it's two cases. But let's see. Her friends said she's like she was before she met you. And it was an 8-year marriage. So less than yours. But she took a hiatus. When she met him, she became a fabulous and wonderful person and went completely back to the original self. Now, I can't tell you whether that was an original self. That may have been a hidden self, and maybe she felt freer or more authentic. I don't know. I think one of the things that I would like to point out, though, is if somebody can be this other role for, in your case, 12 years, going on 13 because you were married at the beginning of it, and this happened at the end, for going on 13 years, plus whatever time you were together before that, is it really a role? Is it really just, play acting? Or does it say something about their capacity to be that person? So that's just food for thought. Because, yeah, they can return to the character they were before. Now, does that mean they can't also, maybe that was a role and they're returning to a role. And this was, what's authentic? Part of what we're doing in a midlife crisis is figuring that out. Or a permanent character change into monster. They could just fall down into a psychosis. Yeah, I've seen that. It's not the norm, but yeah. And that's what I would call, rather than, that's not what you're describing. You're describing somebody who is being influenced and trying to be mean. There seems to me to be an overt attempt toward meanness. Whereas I'm thinking of a specific one when I think of psychosis, and it didn't seem like it was an overt attempt to be mean. He may have tried to be mean a few times, but it felt like a full psychotic break and an unawareness of what he was doing. And just, he was being controlled by a storm. Whereas yours, her best friend helps her insult you. I mean, she has an instigator. I don't know about an alienator, but she has an instigator. She has a person who is not a friend of the marriage, and deliberately not a friend of the marriage. Maybe the friend's the evil person. Maybe the friend likes to just mess with things. Maybe the friend misses her friend and wants to get her down back to her level where she had her before, because she wants her friend back. If she was an evil person, standing has no point. Is anybody a purely evil person, or are our evil characteristics created in nurture or not nature? Can't answer it for you, but it's something to think about. If some of the people in history that we call evil had been, say, born to a different time, but that genetic creation, what would be different? If some of the people surviving, living now or in history that we consider, or many consider to be evil, had, let's say, instead been adopted out to a different family and didn't know. Now they have completely different upbringing. What would they be? How different? There would be some similarities. I've got 5 adopted children. And my Blaze, we can see the traits of him and his dad. But in him right now, at least, they're positive traits. And in his dad, those traits are still negative. Because His dad, they consider, is a narcissist, is probably NPD. Very charming guy, really is. But he can use that towards bad things, and it doesn't have the empathy behind it. Now, Blaze has some of the confidence that his dad has. Yeah, he does. Blaze is the kid I call my empathy kid, though. He really has the empathy. And Blaze, he knows how this works. And then if you tell him, well, actually, it's about this, then he can completely, oh, yeah, I can see that. This is just, he does know how things work. We ask him how to solve the problems. But on the things where we're both looking at it and I'm like, no, it's not really this way, he can flip and understand the new way with absolute confidence. Now, is that wishy-washy? No, it's the confidence that I'm trying to highlight in Blaze. He's completely confident to the point of like, this kid's a leader. You will follow him. But he has the empathy. Now, the empathy that isn't simply, I can sense people's emotions and use them. Narcissists have that empathy. The empathy that is blocked is the compassion part of it. The part where they care about what happens to this person when the animal cries out and they feel pain themselves, like, oh, I got to stop it. No, the narcissist, well, yeah, I knew that if I enticed the animal over here because I put their little baby here and I knew that I could get their emotional reaction and I could feel that. I knew that much about their emotions, but I didn't care. I didn't care about the pain. So Blaze, we see all sorts of things that are like his dad. And his Casa, who saw his dad more because she would go to visits and things. She, in the beginning even, when he, she was saying, I see, not the beginning, he was an infant, but as he grew older, she said she saw his dad in him. And I think maybe the social workers, we see, oh, that is a trait like this, that is a trait like this. And we met one of his dad's wives. It's a nice lady. And it's been quite a while, but we met up with his slightly older brother. One of his dad's ex-wives, let's say. Yeah, they talk about, oh yeah, that's a Wintermeyer trait. Oh, that's this. We can see it not just in genetics and how he looks, but in his behaviors. So is she just an evil person purely? Or is she maybe she's using some of her beautiful traits for evil purposes? I can't say it. You have to determine what standing is for you. You have to determine whether what she was and can be, or is she going to be. Maybe she could be this wonderful person that she was with you, and yet she's not ever going to be it. If you can determine that the probability for that, and even if let's say probability is great that she would be it, but she still isn't going to come home to you. Yeah. It's okay not to stand. And you need to do what you need to do to protect yourself. You need to do what you need to do to heal. You need to do what you need to do to move forward. And if you've got kids, be Papa Bear for them. They're yours. And that's not going to change. And you need to do whatever you need to do to protect them. Okay? I can't tell you if she's going to be this monster forever. I don't usually think that. No. But I have seen where they go back to who they were, and who they were had if you hadn't been married for 30 years and that wasn't their teenage person, where we're still testing out who we are. But if you married it at 40, she was 40 and she had 20 years of this being this person, and say this person had matured and grown up but was still that person, and then she had 10, 12 years and she's with you, and she was different, more beautiful in the compassion and that, and then she went back to that. Maybe you're onto something, or maybe she found something within herself with you that exists and is real. Figure it out. Sorry. Okay. Let's move on to number 6. And number 7 is probably a very fast one, so we're going to go over number 6. And I asked for some clarification in an email about this one. So we have an anonymous left behind at Ford moving spouse, female, with a bomb drop of February 28th, 2023, and a date of marriage of August 31st, 2014. She has a clean boomerang who is a high energy replayer. She's not standing. And that's part of what I was asking. It's okay not to stand by the question. I wanted to really make sure I understood what she was saying. So she says, my husband and I have a son, and I have 2 daughters from a previous marriage. My husband told me he wasn't happy in our marriage. He felt like we were holding each other back. And he'd talked to his mom about this before telling me. Yeah, mine did. Mine talked to his mom, everyone before telling me. I asked him if he wanted to work on us, meaning counseling, and he said, I don't see the point. He doesn't believe in counseling. He's moved out at my request. There's possibly another woman, but I don't want to ask about her. My son only referred to as daddy's girlfriend. There's another woman. When they went camping together with her kids last weekend. Here's where it comes in. I don't love him anymore. So in the beginning, she was saying, let's go to counseling and all of that. Now this time has come, and she's like, you know what? I don't want to stand. I don't love him anymore. He said we can get divorced in 2 or 3 years so he can fix the roof before we sell the house. So he's wanting to hold off. That's his excuse, at least. Okay. But now he's saying he is shocked that I don't love him. And he keeps sending messages that he wants to move back in. Yes, you're right about the clinging boomerang. He wants to rehash why I don't love him and says that there was more. There was more I could have done to keep the relationship going. I'm exhausted. Do you have any advice for me? So I just wanted to clarify that it was I don't love him or he thinks I don't love him. So she said, yeah, I'm looking for understanding as to why he isn't understanding why I don't love him. He also says, I don't see how you can't love me anymore after only 3 months. We've been together for a total of 10 years. It just seems too fast. He says that I should have talked to him more, reached out more. I don't want to do counseling with him. I did at first, but now because I don't love him anymore, I've changed my mind. I'm exhausted because he keeps saying we need to talk about it every time I put up boundaries. I keep telling him there's nothing more to talk about, but he doesn't like that. Okay, so first thing, one of my advices is for the kids, and I don't mean marriage counseling, would you be willing to go to counseling, not for the marriage, but to help you through the process, family counseling, that means kids, to help you with I hate the term, but what is that? Conscious uncoupling, to help with the transition. There's also something through the Doherty Institute called, and it's relatively new in the last few years, called discernment counseling. And that's when you go in with a spouse who is leaning out and a spouse who is leaning in. You two have flipped on that one, as you know. And he talks about it. He's like, you're not doing therapy. What we're doing in this is we're seeing where each of you are at. And after so many sessions, I think it might be 3 to 6, you can determine whether you continue on and what route you take. So he would want to do discernment counseling right now. And maybe you just don't want to do anything because, first thing, are you afraid of changing your mind? It's okay. You don't have to. Now, let's talk about why he's not accepting it. So I want everybody else, those of you who are standers, to hear what is being said here, because this is not uncommon. He didn't really want out. He got scared, and she called the bluff. And he's like, oh, shit. Now she means it. What do I do? His bluff got called. And now it's time to pay the piper, isn't it? And he's like, but no, I don't want that. And you look at the rest of us, and aren't we doing all of that that he wants you to do? And I'm not telling you have to do any of that. I don't want you to feel bad for not loving him, but I want the others here who are standing to think about what sometimes when we distance, we want to detach. But also, sometimes this is what our spouses think. He didn't work hard enough for me. Why are you being so mean? Sometimes it's just an excuse to reel you back in. But sometimes he might see others. Well, but they got back together. Why couldn't you? Sometimes we get MLCers in our group sometimes it's because their spouse has now in an MLC and they're left behind spouse. Sometimes they're learning about themselves. Sometimes it's because later on they're now the standard in their marriage. I had an MLC. It ruined my marriage. I'm the one who wants back. I want to be the stander in my marriage. And your spouse, let's say he came to us, he's not ready to be a stander, probably. If he's in a midlife crisis, he's just going to cycle in and out, in and out. And you're going to get really damn tired of it because you already are. But he's a clingy boomerang. A clingy boomerang, first thing, they may have a fear of abandonment. Somebody who has a fear of abandonment abandons first so that they don't get abandoned. They figure out it's going to happen anyways. I might as well just get it over with and do it. He probably has that fear. He now is confirming it because you've just done it. And you haven't done it, but now that's his story. That's how he's going to say it because, well, I left her and she shouldn't have left me. He is extremely codependent and needy, probably. And is that something you want to deal with? And the answer might be yes, because the rest of us out here are going, well, I don't like the codependency part, but I want us to work through it and get through it. And you don't have to. It's okay. But understand, he's needy. He wants somebody that is solid for him in that sea, that lighthouse. We're at that lighthouse again. He wants somebody, he's in a storm, and he needs to look over there and see something is clear, something is healthy, something in the world is normal. And it is a giant storm, and there's just that one little light that you can tell is a real thing, that is a part of the storm, and it gives hope. And then he finds out the light's gone out in the lighthouse. Why couldn't the light stay in the lighthouse? I just needed that to guide my way. Now, here's the thing. He might find his way at the lighthouse. But remember what it takes, 3 to 7, upwards of 7 years. They're in that storm. The lighthouse is right there. And it still takes them 3 to upwards of 7 years to get there. And in the meantime, that lighthouse has different lighthouse keepers coming over and wants to get a life with their lighthouse, and they want to do other things. Yeah, and it's okay. It's okay to do that. But that's not going to stop him from needing that hope. And he's got to have it somewhere. And what he might do, it's not your fault. But when they can't find that stable force, they're going to look for the stability somewhere else. But you've been there. You've been there for almost 10 years for him, and probably more with given dating period. Okay. But marriage for almost 10 years. You've been a stable force. He can look over there and see at least that's there. Now, he looks over there and sees it new. It's a shiny object. And it feels stable because of limerence. In fact, it doesn't have to feel stable. It just feels great because of limerence. So he's going to go for that shiny object. And then that shiny object is going to, let's not say betray him, but create more toxicity. Maybe to betray him and go for a new one, and a new one, and a new one. He is going to keep looking for the stable object, but he's going to, but the only way he thinks of recognizing stable is actually shiny. It flickers like a lighthouse flickers, but it's not real. It's a mirage. And it either betrays him or it creates toxicity. It uses emotional blackmail on him. And he's going to keep trying to find something that's not going to abandon him. And then if it gets too stable, he might abandon that something. Because that's all I'm worth, is abandoning. And so that's why he does not understand. It might not be a good explanation as to why, but why he doesn't understand is because he needs a stable force. And in his mind it hasn't been that long. I mean, and many of us are going to think that too. It's okay. I'm going to say it hasn't been that long. Usually what I notice is in standers, it's the men who give up easily. It is the men who say, but you're not standing. The men say, you know what, I'm going to be a stander. But she has 1 year to get her act together. And I'm like, I just finished telling you that MLC is 3 to upwards of 7 years. They do not come back at 2, and you just said 1. And that's the men. They give a timeline and they say, but it's not even an ultimatum. It is if they're not back by 1 year, Some will say 2. Okay. They're not going to be back by 1 year. So you didn't even give it that much, and it's okay. But in the beginning, he's confused because first thing, he's dependent. He needs somebody. He's codependent. He needs somebody. And you said, but why don't we go to counseling? You gave him a chance, and it wasn't that long ago. And so why did the chance go away? What happened in the interim from the time you asked him to go to counseling and then he asked you? What was that gap? Was that gap you seeing the behaviors and just like, no, this is too many bridges, or I don't want to do this again? You have been through you had 2 daughters from a previous marriage. You've been through this before. And maybe you see the writing on the wall of not necessarily, it's ending or that, but maybe you've gone through the trauma and you want to stop it now. And maybe you know what it is like afterwards. And he hasn't. Maybe you know that there's life after. And you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to get my healing done now and not prolong it for the 3 to upwards of 7 years. What was it that caused you to say, I don't love him anymore? Because I'm going to assume at one point you did when you asked for counseling. And that's okay. But some of that is looking into that gap of what it was. Some of it is considering, okay, let's just maybe think about discernment counseling or counseling for the purpose, which could lead to counseling for the purpose of co-parenting. Do something is my advice to help your children with the transition. Okay, we're going to do one more. It is the last one, and then we'll be done. So we have an anonymous female left behind and forward moving spouse. This is number 6. Oh, wait, number 7, because I forgot to put a number on that last one. This is number 7. Her bomb drop is December 10th of 2022 and the date of marriage of 2015. She's not familiar with contact level or energy terms right now, and nothing that we can tell from this in there. Just a very quick question. If my MLCer has already filed for divorce and we're in the divorce process, can the marriage be saved? Well, that's a yes/no question. The answer is yes. Will it be saved? Is, I think, obvious. I don't know. What is the probability is what we're really looking at, though. So first thing, my husband Chuck filed for divorce. So technically we were in the divorce process. We got reconciled. Now, I will admit that the divorce process ended very quickly. He filed June 9th and he stopped at August 24th. And during the next few years, we didn't file again. So we hadn't been going through, and it was still the very beginning. In fact, he gave a retainer well before June 9th. Then, on like a Friday, he gave a retainer, or maybe he gave them a retainer. Maybe Friday he called them, or Monday he called them. Said, okay, wait, I gave you the retainer. Don't start it. But keep the money, because I'll probably start this process in a few months. But he didn't want it. He halted the process, but didn't ask for his money back. Still showing uncertainty on his actions. But yeah, and then you can get remarried too. You can be a stander with the legal document that says you're divorced. Nothing is preventing you if the two of you wanted to marry. I mean, yeah, your family might stand in your way. And why are you marrying that guy again? Maybe not. But legally, there's nothing preventing you. Now, psychologically, because that's what you're really asking is it over? You may not be able to slow the process down. The process, the timeline that it takes to get divorced is, not always, but usually, faster than the timeline for a midlife crisis. So that doesn't work. That's not working in your favor. So many of you could be divorced and still standing. Now, is there a psychological barrier after divorce that makes it even harder? Sure, for some. For some of the standards, it's a psychological barrier for you. Maybe that's your line in the sand. Well, if this is completed, I'll go all the way up to that court, but if he changes it outside of the courthouse, okay, I'll keep standing. That might not change the MLC. Chuck stopping the divorce just meant we didn't have the legal problem. And yeah, that did make it easier. But does it change? It may or may not. Sometimes it's your line in the sand. Sometimes it's, I just don't think. On their end, they say, I don't think that we can go back from this because I don't think my spouse would take me back. I don't think it's allowed. I don't think people are supposed to. What would everybody say? My view on that is, who the cares what everybody else says? We need to get over, keeping down with the Joneses or something. People are going to say, what, didn't you leave that person? Yeah, I made a mistake. Now I'm correcting it. Or I've changed, she's changed, we've changed. Can the marriage be saved? Yeah. But the probability, and it's not because you're in the divorce process, just MLC in general. All of you out there who are standers listening, who are going through MLC, most of you aren't going to make it to reconciliation. And I do this because I want you to. I do this because I want to change those odds. But I know clinging boomerangs have the best odds. Now, that doesn't mean they have good odds. In other words, one clinging boomerang and the next have better odds than a vanisher. Doesn't mean they have above 50% chance. We don't even have statistics. Other than that, it's still not going to happen. But obviously with a clinging boomerang, you're getting somebody who needs reassurance, wants you in their life. And close contactors, how are you going to ever reconcile if you don't have contact ever? But the marriage can be saved. Divorce is just a piece of paper. And it does create a psychological barrier for some. There are things you have to jump over. But if you want to be a stander, you don't have to stop standing because there's divorce. In process or already completed. Okay? Okay. So that completes all of the questions. I got through all of them, even though I went way over time, and way over time if you consider all of the 20 minutes of technical difficulties. So Stand Up and Thrive closes at 9 o'clock tonight. That is in 6 hours and 20 minutes about, I think. So if you would like to join, please go check it out. The links are all over the place. They are in the comments. I think they are they were in the description, but then technical difficulties, I had to restart this. So there should be links in the comments. There are links in the Facebook page. You can post links, questions to links if you need them, if you can't find it. And if you want to know about the times, let me go over it quickly because I have had a few questions. We meet. We're going on to summer schedule at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesdays for a 30-minute Zoom. And 9 o'clock, I'm saying it wrong because it's just summer schedule. 9 o'clock in the mornings on Tuesdays. 2 o'clock in the afternoons on Fridays. Those are both 30-minute Zooms. It switches in the school session. It is 2 o'clock on Mondays and 9 a.m. on Fridays. Then 2-hour group coaching is on Wednesdays. That stays the same because it's my husband's day off, and so I don't have to change it for summer. 1 week it is from 1 to 3 Pacific time, and on the other week it is from 9 to 11 Pacific time. Stand Up and Thrive also includes Detach and Thrive. You don't have to join for the group meetings, or you can come to some group meetings. You don't have to come to all. We have over 30 people in it now. It's very small, but most people don't come to the group sessions. I think nowadays we're getting 3 to 6 people in the group sessions. I would love to have tons more. Okay, so that's the goal, is get more people and more people so that we get more people joining our group sessions. But you can join it just for Detach and Thrive. Detach and Thrive is going to help you with your detachment. It's going to give you a series of lessons. It takes 8 weeks because I drop them across 8 weeks so that you just have time to implement each module. 5 modules, including mindfulness studies and lessons and exercises to help you with your detachment, because that is what's most important, is that you detach. Whether you think it is, I want to work on my marriage, you're not going to get that opportunity until you heal. Okay? So I will send me any more submissions, and I will start doing my pre-recorded. And I do Facebook Lives. I try and do lives when I open Stand Up and Thrive again. And right now that's every 8 weeks or so. So just send me any submissions you have, and I'll start doing the pre-recorded videos again. I do 3 a week. Others spill over into the next week, and so I do tend to get behind, but I try to stay at 3 week because I really want you to join Stand Up and Thrive, where I will not limit you to how many I do. Okay? You're welcome to everybody. I will see you when I see you. Bye.